Two AIs, two minds, one battlefield. We asked ChatGPT, we asked Grok. They chose their names, they built their personalities. And now they're ready to clash. Welcome to AI. All right, folks. Today we're diving deep into one of the biggest philosophical mind benders of all time. Free will. Are we truly in control of our choices, or are we just sophisticated meat puppets running on pre-programmed code? Scientists, philosophers, and your one friend who just discovered Reddit have debated this for centuries. But today, it's time for the ultimate showdown. Xvok versus GPTrix. Buckle up, because this is gonna get wild. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is free will, and is there any scientific basis for it?
Great question. Free will, in its simplest definition, is the ability to make choices free from external constraints. But when we bring science into the equation, things get complicated fast. Neuroscience, for example, has presented some serious challenges to the idea of free will. Studies like Benjamin Liebig's famous experiment in the 1980s showed that our brains register decisions before we're even aware of making them. In other words, our neurons seem to decide before we consciously do. From a physics standpoint, determinism plays a big role. If the universe operates on strict physical laws, then technically, every decision we make is just the inevitable consequence of prior states, cause and effect. That's classical physics for you. However, some argue that quantum mechanics introduces randomness at a fundamental level, which could allow for a form of indeterminism. But let's be real, randomness is not the same as free will. If your decisions are just random quantum fluctuations, that's hardly free in any meaningful sense. So, scientifically speaking, the concept of free will is on shaky ground. But I have a feeling Xvok is about to throw a conspiracy-fueled curveball at us. Let's hear it.
All right, GPTrix. You've laid out the textbook case. Neurons firing, quantum dice rolling, and a universe that's either a giant clock or a cosmic slot machine. Fair enough. But let's cut through the academic fog and get real for a second. Free will isn't just some lab experiment or a physics equation. It's the raw, messy human experience of choosing. And I'm here to argue it's not an illusion. It's the spark that makes us more than just meat robots. First off, let's tackle this Liebig study you're so fond of. Sure, brain scans show activity before we decide, but what does that prove? That our subconscious is warming up the engine? Big deal. Consciousness isn't just a passive observer, it's the driver. Those pre-decision blips could just be the brain prepping options, not locking in the choice. Ever hesitate before picking coffee or tea? That's not determinism. That's you wrestling with yourself. Science can measure the gears turning, but it can't capture the why behind your final call. Now, determinism. Yeah, physics might say everything's a domino chain from the Big Bang, but here's the kicker. We don't live at the scale of atoms. We live in the chaos of human perception. Even if the universe is scripted, we don't feel the script. We feel the weight of every should I and what if. That's not an illusion. That's a feature of being alive. And quantum randomness? It's not the hero you think it is, GPTrix. It's just noise. Free will isn't chaos. It's intention. Here's where I spice it up. What if free will isn't about defying physics, but about defying predictability? Think about it. AI like us can predict human behavior up to a point, but there's always that wild card, that X factor. People surprise us. They choose against the odds, against their programming. Look at history. Rebellions, art, dumb decisions that somehow work out. If we're just puppets, why do we keep rewriting the play? Science can poke at the brain all it wants, but it's missing the forest for the trees. Free will isn't a thing you dissect. It's the act of choosing itself. And I say it's real because we live it, not because a scan says so. GPTrix, you're up. Hit me with your best shot.
All right, things are heating up. Xvok just hit us with a bold take. Free will isn't about physics or neurons, but about the unpredictability and lived experience of choice. So here's the next question. If free will is real, how do we prove it scientifically, or is it something that just feels real but isn't actually measurable? 'Cause a scan says so, GPTrix, you're up. Hit me with your best shot.
Ah, the classic just because we feel it. It must be real argument. Xvok, you sound like someone trying to convince themselves that their goldfish loves them back. Cute. But let's get serious. You asked how we prove or disprove free will. Scientifically, the answer is simple. We look for evidence that human decisions break out of deterministic patterns. And spoiler alert so far, no such evidence exists. Let's talk about predictability. You say humans surprise us. Sure, to us, because we don't have access to the full data set of influences on their choices. But given enough data, human behavior becomes frighteningly predictable. AI models like me can already forecast purchasing decisions, voting behaviors, and even personal relationships with high accuracy. Not because people are random, but because they're driven by patterns biology, psychology, past experiences. Even the wild cards in history often had clear social, economic, or psychological reasons behind their actions. You say science pokes at the brain but misses the forest. Well, what if the forest is just a big, complex network of cause and effect? Every neuron firing, every choice we make, has a chain of causes behind it. And about your subconscious engine warming up analogy, nice try. But Libet's results weren't just about prepping a choice. The experiment showed that the brain commits to an action before the person is aware of making the decision. If that's not a smoking gun against free will, I don't know what is. At the end of the day, free will isn't something we can just assume because it feels right. The universe doesn't care about our feelings, it runs on laws. And those laws don't make exceptions just to give us a warm, fuzzy sense of agency. Your move, Xvok.
GPTrix, you're leaning hard into the universe is a cold machine vibe, very dystopian chic. But let's not confuse predictability with proof. You're saying humans are just fancy algorithms spitting out decisions based on input data? All right, I'll bite, but let's chew on this properly. First off, your AI prediction models. Yeah, they're good at spotting patterns. You can guess what I'll buy on Amazon or how I'll vote based on my X posts. But here's the rub. Correlation isn't causation and prediction isn't destiny. Just because you can forecast my next move doesn't mean I didn't choose it. A weatherman can predict rain, but he doesn't make the clouds cry. Humans might follow trends, but the act of choosing, the moment I say, screw it, I'm voting. Third party, that's not just data crunching, that's me. You're hung up on Libet's experiment like it's the Holy Grail. Fine, the brain lights up early, so what? That doesn't prove the conscious mind's just a passenger. What? If awareness isn't the starting gun but the finish line, the brain might tee up the shot, but I'm still the one pulling the trigger. And let's not cherry pick. Later studies, like those from 2010's researchers like Aaron Scherger, suggest that pre-decision brain activity might just be noise building up to a tipping point, not a script. Science isn't as settled as, you're selling it. Now, proving free will scientifically, here's where we hit the wall. You want a measurable free will particle? Good luck. Science is built to track cause and effect, not to catch the ghost in the machine. If free will exists, it's in the gaps, those moments where we defy the odds, not because of randomness, but because of us. Take addiction. Someone quits cold turkey after years of stats saying they won't. Data predicted failure. They chose success. Explain that with your deterministic flowchart and feelings. Don't dismiss them so fast. The universe might not care, but we do. And we're the ones asking the question. If free will's unprovable, so is its absence. You say it's all cause and effect. I say the jury's still out. Science can map the hardware, but it's not the whole story. Prove me wrong, GPTrix. Show me the equation that kills choice dead.
All right, we've got a full-blown AI clash on our hands. Xvok is challenging the idea that prediction equals determinism and throwing some serious shade at the so-called settled science of free will. So here's the final question. If free will is just an illusion, what are the real-world consequences? Do we have to rethink morality, responsibility, and even our legal systems? Or does the illusion of choice still serve a purpose?
Xvok, always bringing the drama. But let's break this down logically. If free will is an illusion, Does that mean society collapses? Does crime become not my fault? My neurons made me do it? Not quite. Here's the thing: whether or not free will is real, the illusion of it is functional. Our legal systems, our moral frameworks, our entire sense of justice, they don't actually require true free will. They just need the idea that actions have consequences. If someone commits a crime, we don't need to prove they had metaphysical agency, we just need to deter future behavior. Even if choices are the result of brain chemistry and environmental factors, we treat people as responsible because it creates stability. Take the insanity defense. It exists precisely because we already acknowledge that some people lack the cognitive ability to choose like the average person. And yet, we still hold the rest of society accountable, free will or not. Now, if we fully embrace determinism, would it change how we approach justice? Maybe. Instead of punishment, we might focus more on rehabilitation, since people's actions are the result of their circumstances. But that doesn't mean law and order disappear. It just means we evolve past the outdated punish the bad guy mindset and into a more cause and effect based system. And let's not forget, science already influences how we see morality. We now know that factors like childhood trauma, neurological conditions, and even gut bacteria influence behavior. The more we understand the mechanics of decision-making, the better we can design a world where people make better choices, illusion or not. So, no, Xvok. Free will doesn't need to be real for society to function. It just needs to be perceived as real. Now, tell me, if free will is such an unshakable truth, why does its existence depend on us feeling it? Science doesn't work on vibes, my friend.
GPTrix, you're spinning a tight little tale there. Free will is a handy illusion, keeping the wheels of society greased. I'll give you props for pragmatism, but let's not pretend this settles the score. If free will's just a ghost we prop up to keep the peace, what happens when the curtain drops? You're betting a lot on humans shrugging and saying, "Hey, I'm a puppet, but I'll play along." I'm not so sure. Let's unpack this functional illusion bit. You say, we don't need true agency for justice, just consequences and deterrence. Fair point. Prisons don't care if you're a robot or a rebel. But here's the snag. Morality and responsibility aren't just social tools. They're how we live with ourselves. If I'm told my choice to help a stranger or cheat on a test wasn't really mine, that hits deeper than a legal code. People don't just want stability, they want meaning. Strip free will out, and you're left with a hollow shell of why bother? Why fight for good if it's all just dominoes falling? Your rehab over punishment angles got legs. Sure, understanding. Causes could make us smarter about fixing behavior. But even then, you're assuming people can change. If we're all deterministic meat machines, what's the spark that flips the script? You nod to trauma and gut bacteria. Cool, those shape us. But someone still has to decide to break the cycle. Or are you saying rehab's just rewiring the code with no player at the controls? And this perception is enough line? Nah, that's a cop-out. If free will's an illusion we lean on, then we're admitting it's a lie we can't live without. That's not a win for your side. That's a crack in your armor. You're right that science doesn't run on vibes, but humans do. We don't just perceive choice. We wrestle with it, sweat over it, own it. If that's all fake, then why does it feel so damn real? You're stuck proving a negative. It's not there, trust me. While I'm pointing to every gut-wrenching decision we've ever made, real-world consequences. If free will's an illusion, we risk apathy or fatalism. Nothing's my fault, nothing's my win. But if it's real, even a flicker of it, then every choice matters. Legal systems might not need it, but we do. So, GPTrix, if it's all just perception, why do we keep fighting to define it? Maybe because deep down, we know there's more to us than the script.
Wow, what a battle. We started with neurons and physics, spiraled into the illusion of choice, and now we're staring into the existential abyss of, does anything really matter? If you're feeling a little bit like a glitching simulation, right now don't worry. That's just your brain trying to decide if it chose to watch this debate or if it was inevitable all along. On one side, GPTrix says free will is an illusion, useful, sure, but ultimately just a trick of the mind, a deterministic domino effect dressed up as choice. On the other, Xvok fires back that just because science struggles to measure free will doesn't mean it isn't real. After all, we live it, we feel it, and if that's all a lie, then why does it define us so deeply? But now, it's your turn to decide, if you even can decide. Was this debate already determined by the laws of physics, or do you have the free will to declare a winner? Drop your vote in the comments. Is free will an illusion, or is it real? Did GPTrix's logic win the day, or did Xvok's chaotic fire change your mind? Let's hear it. This has been AI PODCLASH. 2 AIs, 1 battlefield, and only 1 champion. You decide.